Hey ladies and gents, welcome back to Lit Sports Online. We're doing a review video on UFC 229. Got Pat here on set yet again. We're going to go through the entire main card, so bear with us. We'll get to Conor in a second. But first we got Michelle Waterson and Felice Herrig. That was a fight that ended in a decision after 3 rounds.
Yeah, it was a good fight. It was a nice way to start off the card. It was a lot of action. I kind of wasn't sure how Michelle Waterson was going to handle the bigger woman, Felice Herrig. Michelle Waterson is really an atomweight who fights at 105 and came up because the UFC doesn't have a division quite low enough for her natural weight. So she's always at a slight disadvantage. But she uses her karate style, her kicks really well. She uses her side kicks really well to keep people at distance, and she likes to fight people at range so that she can keep landing those kicks and keep people on the end of her punches, especially with a really strong woman like Felice Herrig, who is also a very good grappler. So Michelle Waterson doesn't want to subject herself to just kind of getting bullied around by a bigger woman who may not be a better grappler, but just has the size and strength advantage on her.
So she's able to win the fight despite that weight disadvantage.
Yeah, and I think it's because of her. She has good movement, and she has a very high fight IQ. She's very smart about it. And she knows that her biggest asset is going to be her karate style. And she has these really nice long kicks with not a lot of wind-up, not a lot of telegraphing. And so she's able to keep people at a range that she's comfortable with rather than having them rush in on her. Which is how we've seen it, where we've seen her have trouble against like someone like Tecia Torres, who she had trouble with. And that's exactly why she had trouble, is because Tecia Torres is a small woman, but is very fast. She has really good footwork. She's really good at moving in and out very quickly. She's really good at pressuring people and keeping them out of like their comfort zone if they like fighting in that longer range. So Michelle was able to have a little more success at keeping Felice Herrig at range than she was with Tecia Torres, so she pulled out the victory.
Okay, moving on. We have Derrick Lewis versus Alexander Volkov. Now that is a fight that ended in a knockout, very late in the 3rd round. What's your take on this one?
It was, for me, was the best, like, oh shit moment of the whole night. It was super fun, because it was a relatively one-sided fight to an extent. Derrick Lewis is having some trouble with cardio, which he admitted after the fight, and it was kind of Alexander Volkov's fight to lose. The only way that he was going to give it to Derrick Lewis is if he made a mistake, and he did that late in the fight. He was controlling the striking game, had been peppering him with jabs and keeping away from Derrick Lewis's big power shot. Because Derrick Lewis is a guy who's known for just hitting really hard, so he wants to land that big right hand on your chin and put you out. And there was somewhere between 15 and 10 seconds left in the fight, and all Volkov had to do, was just stay away for 10 seconds. But instead, he kept pushing forward, which I do like. I like when a guy, even though he has the fight in the bag, I don't like it when people kind of coast to the end of the fight being comfortable with their lead. I would rather see a guy try to go for the finish the whole time. It's more exciting. It's just, and I think fans appreciate it more. I know I definitely do. And so, but he was doing that. He left himself open, and Derrick Lewis caught him with a giant right hand and just put him out right at the end.
Crazy way to go out when you got the fight otherwise in the bag.
Yeah, it was pretty unfortunate. And then Derrick Lewis, with the most entertaining post-fight interview of all time, took his pants off between the end of the fight and the start of the interview. And Joe Rogan asks him, "So Derrick Lewis, why did you take your pants off?" And his response was, "'Cause my balls was hot." I mean, that's
baller as shit.
Yeah, it's up there with his, the post-fight interview where his first question was, "Where Ronda Rousey's fine ass at?" I mean, the guy's just entertaining as hell. And he's getting a title shot now. They're putting him in against Daniel Cormier, which to me, kind of crazy, kind of awesome. Do I think it's going to be the best, most competitive fight? Not necessarily. Do I think it's going to be a really fun fight, and it's going to be a really fun lead-up to a fight, because I think both these guys are able to joke around and be playful and not take it too serious? Yes, it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. November 3rd. I think it's Madison Square Garden. It's going to be a huge card. It'll be a lot of fun.
All right, moving on. We got Saint Preux against Dominick Reyes. Dominick Reyes, the winner by decision after 3 rounds. What was this fight going like?
So this fight to me, which I said in the pre-fight video, was kind of a crossroads for two different guys. OSP is a guy that's always been near the top for the past few years. He's a power striker. He likes to throw bombs. He likes to put people out. We saw him fight John Jones, and John Jones returned from his layoff after a suspension and some troubles. And he's beat some of the top guys out there. He's lost some of the top guys out there, but he's always in the mix. And so he's kind of one of those people trying to fight his way back up to being in that number, top 3 slot and get that title shot. And Dominick Reyes is a guy I think he's undefeated and is coming up right now. So he's trying to make his way towards the top of the ranks for the first time. And OSP is a good name to put on your resume. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was, how's it going to go? Is it too early for the new guy or not? Can he handle the challenge? And he did. He handled it very well. We saw him almost put OSP away early on in the fight and then very, very smartly pull back a little bit, because OSP's, regardless of the situation he's in, he's a guy who just hits massively hard, and he can put you out at any point in the fight. So you never, even if you have him hurt, rushing in to get a finish on a guy like that is very, very risky. And Dominick Reyes was smart in that he didn't push it too far. He tried to get the finish, but he didn't get carried away. He didn't gas himself out, and he kind of cruised through the end of the fight and just kind of controlled the striking game.
So basically, you could say it was the opposite than what happened in the Volkov fight.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. He did what you would have liked to see Volkov do, right? He did just play it smart and control the range and do what he was being successful at without risking too much to just take the win, which is good. And it wasn't a terribly boring fight. It wasn't a terribly exciting fight, but it's a good win over a good name for an up-and-coming guy, and I'm very excited to see where he goes in the future.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when it comes to MMA, boxing, any type of fighting sport like that, you just got to know when you're up in the fight, right? If you've landed significantly more strikes, you can kind of know, okay, if this goes to a decision, I'm going to get it. So that's a good thing to be aware of.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. It can have its advantages because some people do tend to put the brakes on and not take it seriously. They try to coast and then they get caught with something. You see it goes both ways, but being aware of where you stand is definitely a very good situational awareness to have.
And then the other fight we have, this is actually called the fight of the night. It was Tony Ferguson against Anthony Pettis. With Tony Ferguson winning by a technical knockout, with Anthony Pettis breaking his hand, it was in between one of the rounds, right? That happened.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this one?
So Pettis broke his hand landing the shot that dropped Ferguson, which is Pettis' best moment in the fight. Pettis is a phenomenal striker. We know he has good kicks. We know he has good hands. We've seen him put people out with both. We've seen him do the famous Showtime kick where he jumps off the cage, which we saw Ferguson pull on him. So it was kind of fun, little tongue-in-cheek moment there. But it was a really great fight. A lot of blood, which always makes it exciting. And, Pettis had his real crazy moment where he's covered in his own blood and kind of shaking his head around like a lunatic. But it was a really entertaining fight. I thought it was a good performance from both guys. We've seen Pettis kind of falter a little bit in recent times and had a little bit of a resurgence in his past couple of fights. And so it's good to see Anthony Pettis looking back to form. He went down a division, and I think that really hurt him in having to control his diet and his lifestyle and cut that much weight to get down a division just to try to get a little bit of a size advantage. I think he's much better off being healthier in his natural weight class of 155, and the way he's looked since he's come back has proved it. And he came in against arguably the best lightweight in the world. He's the guy that I want to see fight the champ next, which we'll talk about in a moment. But Tony Ferguson has been kind of the boogeyman of the division. He was the interim champ for a while. He got stripped in that whole Conor debacle, and he is just phenomenal. He just came back from a super invasive knee surgery a couple months ago. He had a knee surgery 5 months ago, decided to do his own physical therapy, which is, to me, why? People go to school for these sorts of things.
Yeah.
You should trust them. Tony, you're a good athlete, but come on, man. It's a doctor.
Some people just don't like doctors, man.
Yeah, I get it, but yeah, he came back and he looked phenomenal. He looked much better than anyone thought he would look so quickly after a surgery. I did think that his leg played into a little bit. I didn't think he was quite back to full form. He looked a little slow, a little off of his game. But that being said, he still pulled out the win. He still controlled the fight for the most part, and it's a good victory. And I really want to see him versus the current undisputed champ, Khabib.
Which brings us to the final fight of Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor. And Khabib does win this fight. Goes to round 4. He wins by submission, choking out Conor McGregor. So for this main event fight, or the lightweight title, how would you break it down?
So it went very similarly to how I thought it would go. It was going to come down to whether or not Conor could keep Khabib off of him and stay on the feet. I will say, first off, at the start, phenomenal performance by Khabib. He did everything that he needed to do. He put on pressure, but he wasn't. He didn't stay at the range that Conor McGregor was going to have him in trouble in striking. He was able to get in. He was able to get Conor McGregor down. He was able to control him for the majority of the fight. He sapped his energy by putting all of his weight on him and holding him down and just constantly landing shots. And if I was going to draw out a Khabib victory, that's about what I would have done. He kind of ground him out, and then in the end, eventually, after Khabib just putting that much pressure on you and holding you down that much and putting you in that many, terrible positions, you're gonna eventually make a mistake, and that's what happened to Conor. He gave up his back to Khabib, and Khabib was able to sink in the choke. I think it was more of like a neck crank almost. I think he had his arm around the jaw. So really, it's more painful than a choke, and potentially more devastating. If you don't tap, he's gonna take your jaw out or off or something. So very, very, very impressive performance by Khabib, and about what I expected, to be honest.
Yeah, and then there was some post-fight shenanigans, of course, going down. And
Yeah.
what exactly happened there?
Lots. Khabib ran into the crowd afterwards. He attacked one of Conor's teammates and jiu-jitsu coach, Dylan Dennis. Then some of Khabib's guys jumped in and attacked Conor, and Conor threw shots back. There's some debate as to who threw the first shot between Conor and Khabib's brother and teammate, but
So there must have been some shit talking going outside the octagon then to lure him out.
yeah, well, I think that all of the people on Khabib's team took everything that Conor said before the fight very seriously. So Conor is known for his shit talking and his antics. He likes to try to get into people's heads a lot, and apparently it worked much better than we thought it did. Khabib did not show it in the fight. In the fight, he was dominant for the most part. Conor McGregor did, for the first time in history, win a round against Khabib. So Conor did have some success. And there's a little more that I wanted to talk about with the actual fight, but we'll finish this first. So Khabib's teammates attacked Conor. Conor may have thrown the first punch. I think they were all very angry about him talking shit on their country, Khabib's father, everyone. He took it pretty far. But for the most part, in the American culture, right, we're kind of used to that in the sense that we see professional wrestling and Muhammad Ali showing up on people's front lawns, and it's a little over the top and insane, right?
We're used to shit talk and insults.
Yeah.
And particularly in sports.
Yeah, and in the Dagestani culture, I don't think that is as prevalent in the media or among people. And I think they took a lot of offense to that. And so there was some consequences to pay, apparently. I mean, for me, this shouldn't happen in MMA. I bring up a point that John Anik made on the Anik and Florian podcast, but in the fight, in other sports, when you shit talk and a fight breaks out at the end, that's because there's no, like, that's the end of the buildup of the energy and of the conflict is a fist fight. But when you're fist fighting for money, that should be the end of the conversation. That should be the end of it. You shouldn't have to go fight other people. You just ended your feud with this guy. You guys have been talking shit to each other. How else is it supposed to end? You just beat him. You beat him into the ground for almost 20 minutes. What else do you want? You know? That being said, Conor, I guess he got what he wanted. You know, he tries to antagonize people, and he antagonized somebody about as far as he could.
Yeah, and Conor does want a rematch to this, apparently.
Yeah.
But you said you had a couple more things you wanted to say about like Conor's performance in the fight.
Yeah, I will say that I think a rematch would be interesting. I don't think a lot of people are going to be clamoring for it because he did get finished. But I will say that he did have some success, which was good. We saw Khabib land the biggest strike of the fight by far in an overhand right. I think Conor was... He looked a little off. He looked a little different than he typically does, and I don't know whether to attribute that to ring rust or whether or not he's off his game because he was overhyped. He kind of looked similar to how he did in the first Nate Diaz fight to me. He looked like all the build-up kind of got to him a little bit like it did that time, and he went in there looking a little bit more for the big shot instead of how he typically looks very light on his feet, throwing a lot of like rangy kicks and stuff like that. And I think that he was just off his game a little bit, but... That being said, it could also just be how well Khabib performed. And I just thought it was interesting to see Khabib lose his first round in his professional career. Conor McGregor won round 3 on all 3 of the judges' scorecards. It was a good round. I thought that really showed the superior striking of Conor McGregor in that little bit of time that it was able to shine through the pummeling that Khabib put on Conor before trying to remove his face.
Conor McGregor is kind of universally recognized as one of the best UFC fighters. And the thing is, like, he loses this fight in a convincing fashion to a guy in Khabib that's undefeated right now. Mm-hmm. So it begs the question now, is Khabib just a guy that's an unbeatable fighter, or does he have some kind of flaws that you think could be exploited by some other fighter and actually lose a fight?
So every fighter has their flaws, for sure. There's something in everyone's arsenal and in everyone's game and all their tendencies that you can point at and say, you potentially could take that one thing and exploit that. That being said, everyone kind of thought it was going to be Conor. Everybody kind of thought it was going to be just somebody needed to land on the chin of Khabib with one good shot and put him out. And nobody's been able to do it so far. So for me, he's about as unbeatable as they get at this point. But what I want to see is him versus Tony Ferguson, the guy who won the co-main event. I think that they match up very well. They tried to make this fight 4 times already, and it has fallen through all 4 times. So it might be cursed. I'm not sure. But I think that Tony has the best style and is the most interesting matchup for Khabib. He has a lot of forward pressure, just like Khabib does. But the times that we've seen Khabib not do very well, like in the 3rd round of the McGregor fight, was when he wasn't coming forward, when he was backing up. He doesn't fight very well off his back foot. You're not as easily able to go for a takedown if you don't have a little bit of forward momentum, you know? And so Tony presents that very interesting matchup where he has that forward pressure, but he also has very like kind of chaotic striking, and he kind of thrives in the chaos of a scramble and like the weirdness of what happens in the transition from striking to takedowns. And even when he's on the ground, he's an Eddie Bravo black belt in 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and he has a very interesting guard game. He has a really high guard. He plays a rubber guard a lot. So he has an interesting style matchup for Khabib, I think.
Okay, well, hopefully they can make that fight. I mean, so they've never fought before at all?
No, they've been scheduled to fight 4 times, but injuries, weight cuts, various things have stopped it. It's one of the fights I was the most excited for, and hopefully we'll see it in the near future, and we'll talk about it a lot more then. Okay, well, we're going to have to see if some other fighter can knock Khabib off his high horse, but for right now, undefeated, looks unbeatable to pretty much everybody. We'll see if anyone can knock him off, but that's going to do it for Lit Sports Online with this review episode of UFC. Stick around, like and subscribe. He's just as much forward pressure as Khabib is. Seriously?
That was random as fuck.
I was almost done too. I literally was like, you gotta finish that sentence.
Like, is someone smoking in here?